Welcome to Aarna's News. My name is Aarna Sahu, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. Today is our 100th episode, which is absolutely crazy to me. I cannot even put into words how ecstatic and honestly shocked I am that we've made it this far. What started off as pressing record on my used Chromebook in our living room in 2020 to talk about what you can do if you're interested in computer science or economics, because that is where my interest lies in, to slowly reaching out to women in these fields and hearing their stories to encourage my friends became a project in it itself. I was afraid of speaking to others, specifically public speaking. I would never even think about talking to someone the grade above me or the grade below me. Heck, talking to people that I didn't even know made me so scared. I thought that if I put myself around a bubble of my friends, I would be fine. But there's just so much one can learn by being surrounded by others of varying backgrounds. Talking to my classmates for the first time, to connecting with individuals on social media that I never would have even thought I'd be able to speak to speaking gigs at conferences made me feel like I was truly at my best. Through these podcasts, I was able to break that public speaking stigma in me and realize that I enjoy holding conversation, and I enjoy this mission of bringing STEM and this platform of sheer role models to the next generation of girls. With that said, thank you for being here, and I can't wait for you to listen to this episode.
Know that you have something to offer, no matter what level you're at. And you shouldn't feel like you're worth less of others if you have less experience. The reason I say that is because everyone brings some value, even if they're just starting out. I had interns, when I was a director of engineering, I really tried to hire interns, and more specifically, I wanted those interns to be women because I wanted to open the door for more women to get into tech. And those interns, not all, but some, were quite incredible women that provided really a lot of insights and a different perspective. So I'll guess my first tip, you always have some value to provide, even if you're just an intern.
Today, I am pleased to announce our guest, Limor Gross. Limor is a former director of engineering at DigitalOcean with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. She is now a career coach for ambitious women in tech that want to get to the next level in their careers and achieve more through a results-oriented coaching process. Women she works with, says Limor, enabled them to continuously tear down ceilings by challenging them to think bigger. They also say that she opened their eyes to a new way of contributing to their careers. Limor loves talking about career progression in the tech industry and how to build your brand in the company and externally. Limor is married with 4 children. She loves running and working out at the gym while listening to electronic music. Well, thank you so much, Limor, for being here today. Before we dive into the questions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Aarna. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure being here today. I think you're kind of introduced me pretty well. So I had a career in engineering, started as a software engineer and grew into a director of engineering. I also moved countries with my family along the way. Yes, and I'm happy to be here.
I love that. So my first question for you is, tell us a bit about your career path.
Sure. So I started my career as a software engineer. I went to study computer science and accounting in university, and throughout the studies, I wanted to start getting some experience. So after I finished my second year of university in the summer, I started working part-time, and I continued working on my third year, because I really wanted to get some hands-on experience. And basically that was my beginning of my journey, started coding. I will share my one story, though, that as I worked as a student, I mean, obviously I was grateful, right, that I had a job, and they also paid my tuition. So that was fine. It was great, actually. But I wasn't really happy with what I did. Still, I said, okay, I want to finish the school year. And after that, I remember reaching out to my skip level manager and shared with him that I wasn't happy with what I was doing and I wanted to move to a more modern technology. I wanted to move to Java back then. And luckily for me, I was able to do that. So I guess first message I want to give here to the audience is that don't be afraid and don't shy away from voicing your ambitions and what you want.
I think that's really important, what you said there, to just not shy away because, you were working in, your role and then you wanted to pivot and you weren't shy and you decided to like ask for that. And, there you are, you're able to, I think, work with Java. And I think that's really instrumental to realize that, okay, if you want something, you should definitely ask for it because, your future is only in your hands. And if you don't ask for it, then you probably won't get it.
For sure. And the worst case, they can say no, right?
But at least you tried.
Exactly. And I see that again and again with women that I'm coaching, no matter what the level that they are at, they're afraid to ask. They keep saying, oh, but I don't have a chance to get that. I just coached a woman today that really is exhausted and, burned out, and she needs more engineers in her team. And she said, well, they're not going to give me headcount. I said, well, they're definitely not going to give you any headcount if you don't ask. So it's about asking.
Yeah. And for me, I'm someone who doesn't really like asking sometimes because it can be hard, but it's just important to know that if you don't ask, then you probably won't change where you're at right now. Like if you're frustrated, the only thing you can pretty much do is just ask, and maybe you'll get to somewhere after that. And from there, things might brighten up just because you asked for help.
For sure. And there is a book for that called Women Don't Ask by Linda Babcock and Sarah Landwehr. Maybe I mispronounced their name, but I can share that in the chat here so you can kind of include that in the show notes. I know that you want some recommendations for resources. This is apparently not something rare, unfortunately. I mean, we don't feel comfortable asking, and it goes way beyond Aarna, you and I. It's kind of, I don't know why, but we're programmed as women to feel uncomfortable asking. And we need
Yeah,
to start changing that narrative.
that's so true. All right. So my question for you is, what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
There's so many tips, but I would say, first of all, know that you have something to offer, no matter what level you're at. And you shouldn't feel like you're worth less of others if you have less experience. The reason I say that is because everyone brings some value, even if they're just starting out. I had interns, when I was a director of engineering, I really tried to hire interns. And more specifically, I wanted those interns to be women because I wanted to open the door for more women to get into tech. And those interns, not all, but some, were quite incredible women that provided really a lot of insights and a different perspective. So I guess my first tip, you always have some value to provide, even if you're just an intern. The second thing I would say, as I said, don't be afraid to ask. But before you ask, you really need to be intentional. And I haven't been intentional throughout my career. And I haven't been always intentional. Let's put it that way. You really need to know what you want. If it's not clear to you, then you need to figure that out. Get some help, either with I don't know, people you work with, your manager, or coaches or whatever, or mentors, but you have to know what you want and then figure out how to ask for what you want.
Absolutely. I think that's so important with what you said. Like, regardless of what level you're at, you always have something you can provide, regardless of your position. Like if you're an intern, you might think that, okay, everybody else in that room is more qualified, so maybe I shouldn't raise my hand, I shouldn't say something. But your experiences and your values kind of shape who you are, and we're all different from each other. So what you have is completely different from whatever someone else is thinking. So you are always valuable. And I really loved what you said with the second part too, that if you don't know what your purpose is, then it's something that you should definitely look out for because there's something meant for everyone. You just have to take like the proactive approach to do so.
Absolutely.
And my question for you is, what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
A common myth about your profession. I think that eventually, even if you are working as a developer, it is very much a people's environment. So I think there's a myth that software engineers, I'm not saying that neither of that truth, but like people that just write in the write code, right? And you basically need to be a good engineer and know how to solve complex problems and write good code. But that's just a part of it. I mean, I think that in order to be a good engineer, you actually have to be a good communicator and have good people skills. Maybe in the beginning, being just a good coder will suffice, will be okay. But if you want to grow, you have to be really able to work with different kind of people and solve problems that are more than just you and your computer. It's very much a people's environment. And I think people have this thinking that, oh, and software engineers, they don't talk, they don't communicate with anyone, they just sit in front of the computer. And that's really not true. I mean, some of them may, but I think that if you want to be a good one, you really need to have good people skills.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big reason of why media portrays it like that. Like ever since I was a kid, I've been watching TV shows where they just portray like the smartest white guy and he's like nobody really likes him. He's a nerd and he's just really unpersonable and just someone people don't want to be around. And that's kind of why a lot of people my age don't really like, computer science because that's what we've been kind of taught in a way growing up. And it's a little bit funny thinking that, but it's definitely not always true. Sure, there are some people that resemble that characteristic, but a far majority are not. They're women, they're people of color, they're very personal people. And STEM isn't always just like coding or like robotics. There's so much that goes on around that. And there's definitely always a place for you, even if you don't like coding, but you still want to be in, say, computer science.
For sure. And you can do so many things, right? With technical skills, so many options. You can be a product person, you could be a sales or maybe some sales support person, you can be DevOps. There's so many options.
Absolutely. And every single role is instrumental in kind of building the product. So even though not a lot of people think that, sales is that important, it still is because you're technically marketing the product to other people. And, there are different roles that not a lot of people know of because of what we've been taught like ever since we were little.
Definitely.
All right. And my next question for you is if you could step into my shoes or younger self, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
I think I would ask myself, what do I really want to do? And what skills do I have? And I would ask that myself multiple times, not just once, because I didn't really know what I wanted, and I chose whatever I did kind of, because it seems right, because it seems like practical and good profession. I never stopped asking what I really wanted. And I wish I have. I wish I have asked myself throughout my career, what do I want? What are the possibilities? And be open to, other possibilities that maybe I should have pursued, maybe not. I mean, I don't have regrets, but I think that I could have done multiple things, not just one.
Absolutely. And it's really important to ask yourself what you want to do and also at different times because for me, when I was a kid, I really liked computer science initially, and then for some reason I didn't like it anymore. And then I really liked business and I wanted to be a businesswoman and I wanted to go into trade. And then I didn't want to do that anymore. So then I went back to like CS and now it's like paired with a little bit of economics. So I kept on asking myself what I wanted to do. And if I didn't have a clear goal, then I just looked for something and I didn't like stop that curiosity. So even though like I want to pursue computer science now, maybe it'll change and maybe I want to pursue writing in the future, but I'm open to those possibilities. And I think that's really important. And it doesn't matter what age you're at, so long as you ask yourself what you want to do, you're still in power of your future.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of said something very important. Doesn't matter, what's your age and where are you in your career. You can always change. I mean, and another thing that I would mention here is that even if you decide to do something different, you always bring with you all the experiences that you have gained. Even if you change to something that looks like, oh, whatever I did so far, it's all kind of, I'm throwing everything. It's not. I mean, you gained a lot of experiences that are going to be valuable even if those are totally different things.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that I bring up to a lot of people I know, but Steve Jobs, when he was creating, his Apple prototypes, in college he took a calligraphy class for fun and he probably thought that it wouldn't be useful, but later he started creating different fonts for like text. So just because he took that one class, he realized the importance of like art and how that could be helpful to people to describe, what they want to write. So he decided to add that, and that's one of like the most prominent features in Apple prototypes. So just know that your past knowledge, as you said, it it won't be discounted in your next role because you kind of bring yourself with you to wherever you're at next. So don't discount the experiences you've had.
Absolutely.
All right. And my question for you is what are the best resources or books that have helped you find your career path?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many books, I cannot mention all of them, but first of all, I would recommend reading, or if you don't enjoy reading, listen to audiobooks or podcasts. Always open up your mind. I think that one of the first books that really influenced me was actually The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it's kind of a classic, and I bought a copy and I have it here. I have it in my bookshelf because this book is always going to be relevant, and I can read it 100 more times and it's always going to be valuable. And I actually first encountered that when I was a very, very young software engineer at the beginning of my career. And we had a training about the 7 habits, and then kind of encouraged me to read the book and all that. And this is what I say. It's like about begin with the end with the end in mind, and all those things, right, that we talk about. I really took a lot of those concepts from that book. So that's kind of, one that I always recommend. There's another classic that I really like that also I have on my bookshelf is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It was written I think in 1937. So think about it. It was written quite a while ago. And yes, it looks maybe a little bit old when you read like the examples there, but the concepts are so relevant for today, so much. And it's all about kind of, how to think about the other person and understand them instead of thinking about yourself and arguing and all that. I mean, it has wonderful concepts, so it's another great read. And the third one I would recommend is newer, from Robin Sharma, and actually not The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which is a great book, but actually it's called The Leader Who Had No Title. This book really influenced me. Actually, I was already a leader, but it influenced me in my coaching because people that I coach a lot of time thinks that they cannot lead without a title. And it's totally not true. You can lead even if you are cleaning the toilets. I think this is an example, I think, given in the book. So you can lead at any role that you're doing. Books are wonderful. So highly recommend you to start reading if you are not doing that.
No, I love that because the authors who write these books have like so many experiences that they write about. So even if you haven't experienced this, you're kind of just like reading what they have, and it's like so powerful. And I really love what you said there, that with the last book, that leaders like a lot of leaders don't need titles. And I think that's really important because regardless of where you are, you can always lead. For example, as a student myself, whenever we have group projects, there's typically always a supposed leader who makes sure that things are on track and deliverables are done. But we're like students, we don't really have a title, and it's important to know that like leaders just come from trying to finish a product or trying to meet a due date or something, and it's good to know that you can be a leader without having like this shiny title.
Definitely.
All right, and my question for you is, what do you think is a vital factor that shaped your career? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
I don't know if I have one vital factor. I think, as I said, when I started, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. Uh, I think one of the turning points was when I was promoted to a staff engineer. So I wasn't very intentional before that, and I was a software engineer. And after I was promoted, I started thinking really seriously about what I wanted in my career back then. And I realized that I actually wanted to go into leadership, and that kind of changed my path from being an IC, from being a software developer to becoming eventually a manager.
Yeah, I think that's really important just to realize that you can change things at your own will. And as we said before, it's that you have the power to change your future, and it's pretty much just you who has the power to do that. So if you take the steps to do so, then you're already shaping your own future and becoming the better version of yourself.
For sure. Yeah.
And because we have some additional time, my question for you is, what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I wish I've known that I'm actually more than just one thing, that I can do a lot of things, and there are a lot of possibilities. I think that one of the things that I try to help other women that I wish I had when I started is that there are a lot of possibilities, and we have a lot of skills and a lot of things that we can do. And when I started, I kind of saw only one path. I will write code, I will be a software engineer. But actually, I could do so many things and I could change. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the possibilities back then. And I haven't realized that I'm actually good in many things. Like, I remember that in high school, I mean, I had a teacher that really was very critical of my writing and led me to believe I'm a terrible writer. So, and that kind of shaped my way of thinking, that I can only do something that is very analytical and not involving any like writing or. Uh, and that's just one example. And actually, today, I mean, I haven't wrote a book yet, but I mean, I hope I will someday. And I do write a lot, and I feel like actually I'm not that bad. So I wish that I know that I have many skills and I have a lot of possibilities.
I love that. Just because one of the naysayers says that you can't do something doesn't mean that you can't do it, because they might be projecting onto you or something. Just remember that I think what we said before, that you have the power to just do whatever you want. And say, for example, someone says you can't do it. Well, they don't really, their words shouldn't really matter because you're you and they're them. And I think that distinction is really important to realize.
Yeah, and that's why I always recommend the women that I coach to stay away from people who are kind of naysayers, or in general, like bringing negative vibe as much as possible. Not always as possible, because sometimes those are our family members, but really to try to surround yourself with positive people and that lift their spirit and give them more confidence, rather than people who kind of negative or see limited possibilities.
Absolutely. And my last question for you is, how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
Yeah, I have one sentence I like to share that I don't like school, but I love learning. So I didn't like school that much. And I also didn't like university, to be honest. And I remember that when I graduated, I said, I'm never going to step foot in a university again as like a grad student or whatever. I mean, I didn't want that because that was not the right environment for me. I felt like I'm studying just for a certificate. And I love learning, I love reading. So I either read books, I listen to podcasts, I take online courses or offline, go to conferences. So I always learn something. Try as much as possible every single day to learn something. And I'll tell you another thing. I learn from people that are way younger from me as well. Can be even the age of my kids. Because you always learn and you learn from anyone.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important that even if your schooling ends, there's always a possibility that you can learn, and you should be receptive to that because everyone has something to teach, and that's something extremely important to know.
Yes, and I would say another thing. I'm sure that you have something to teach others.
Absolutely. And so thank you so much, Limor, for being on this interview for me. Have do you have any last words before we end off?
I think whatever I said, just you have many skills, you have many possibilities. So try to open up your mind to possibilities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Limor, for being on this interview with me. I love talking.
Likewise, Arna, thank you so much.
And here are my 3 takeaways from this episode with Limor. 1. Continuous learning and growing. Embracing a mindset of continuous learning helps you stay adaptable and resilient in a rapidly changing world. Lifelong learning encourages creativity and innovation as you are constantly exposed to new ideas and perspectives. 2. Don't be afraid to voice your ambitions. Voicing your ambitions helps build self-confidence as you articulate your goals and take ownership of your aspirations. Demonstrating ambition and sharing your vision can inspire others, positioning you as a leader and motivator. And 3, everyone brings value. Recognizing that everyone brings unique value fosters a culture of diversity and inclusion, enhancing team dynamics and problem solving. Acknowledging that every individual contributes to this whole reinforces the idea that collective efforts lead to greater successes. Thus, that concludes today's episode. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you are listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Dito, you're listening to Aarna Sahu, the host of Aarna's News. Toodles!